Hey guys, I'm Brent Rose, writer and observant antelope, and today we're testing out the brand new Hero5 Black in Hero5 Session. So these are the two new GoPro cameras. This is the Hero5 Black, which is the flagship model, and this is the diminutive Hero5 Session, which is smaller and a little bit cheaper. Let's start with the Hero5 Black. Here's what's new and what's different. First of all, it finally has a touch screen, and it's really nice, very, very responsive. The Hero 4 Black didn't have a touch screen, but it had the high frame rates. The Hero 4 Silver had the touch screen, but the lower frame rates. So finally, GoPro wised up and they combined the two into one. It's definitely a good decision. Another big difference is this is the first flagship GoPro that's waterproof by itself without a case. Now, it's just waterproof to 33 feet, but that should be good for surfing, snorkeling, most water sports other than scuba diving. And that means you can get away with just a smaller frame case for it. So it's a little bit lighter and it preserves much better audio. Audio check. How do I sound? What they did is they put in these innovative tiny mics that clear themselves of water. Mic clearing. As far as resolutions and frame rates go, it's all the same as it was with the Hero 4 Black. You've got 4K at 30 frames a second and 1080p at frames of up to 120 frames a second for really nice slow motion. That said, there are some new shooting modes. For starters, there's linear view. Now, you know how GoPro has that kind of classic fisheye warped point of view? Well, linear mode crops 10% of the edges away and gives you a very, very straight, very flat look. It does a great job and it looks really good. It's just not quite as wide as you're used to from a GoPro. So if you need that extra wide look, leave that off. There's also a new option for stabilized video. Now, same thing holds. It crops about 10% off the edges, but it does make it a much smoother shot. It's not perfect, but it is an improvement. So if something is really, really shaky, it might be worth turning it on. But again, if you're doing POV, you're going to lose a lot of the edges and the top and bottom. So again, I'm not totally sure it's worth it. For those who've used action cameras before, you know that the moments you're white knuckling it on your mountain bike are the moments you want to just start recording, and it's also the moment you don't want to take your hands off the handlebars. Well, the gods have heard you, and now the GoPro can hear you too. GoPro, start recording. GoPro, stop recording. GoPro, shoot a burst. Both the Hero 5 Black and the Hero 5 Session offer about 10 voice controls, and they can do it in 7 different languages. GoPro, dispara una ráfaga. GoPro, shuto o shashin. International gangster. In a first for GoPro, the Hero 5 Black now supports RAW photos. This gives you way more flexibility over things like exposure, color, and detail when you're editing later. There's also an option for RAW audio, which, when enabled, records a separate, higher fidelity WAV file. You can also choose to have wind filters added to it automatically. It's not night and day, but it's an improvement. This is an audio test, first just using the regular track. Now we're going to switch over to the WAV track. How do I sound now? Does it sound better, richer, fuller? Hopefully. One big physical difference you'll notice from all previous GoPros is there's no more power button up front. It's been moved to the side where the Wi-Fi button used to be. Now you can still use it to scroll through commands and change modes and all that stuff, which is good because when touchscreens are wet, they don't work at all. One other physical difference, and this one on the negative side, you can easily see that this one is rolling by the big red flashing light. Up here, this one's rolling too, but it's almost impossible to see. This is really tough in bright sunlight and it's a definite miss. This is GoPro's new competition. This is the Garmin VIRB Ultra 30. It basically looks just like a GoPro. It has all the same frame rates and resolutions, touch screen, voice commands, although not as many commands and only in English. And in general, it's a really high quality. There are some advantages and disadvantages though. The case is designed so you can actually use the touch screen even when it's in the waterproof case, but ultimately it doesn't work that well. In fact, even outside of the case, the menu system's a little bit clunky and it's a little bit slow, at least compared to GoPros. So that's a big win for the Hero 5 Black. The Garmin also has Bluetooth and ANT+ radios, so it can connect to a whole slew of external accessories like heart rate monitors, bicycle power meters, so that's definitely a win for the Garmin. Let's compare image quality. This was shot at 1080-60. The colors are definitely better on the GoPro. For some reason, the Garmin makes it look like I had a bad sunburn. Now let's pause it right here. Look how much sharper the GoPro is. It's much easier to see the creases and writing on my wetsuit, the rugged yet refined stubble on my chin, and even the definition in the mountains behind me. Now, backlighting is one of the tougher challenges for smaller cameras like these. This was shot at 2.7K 24, and it's an even clearer win for the GoPro. The dynamic range is just vastly superior, and you can see more detail in my face and in the background behind me. The Garmin's image looks extremely soft here. What's really surprising is that all of that is flipped when it comes to shooting in 4K. Suddenly, it's the Garmin that handily beats the GoPro in sharpness. Further, GoPro's colors become way less accurate, skewing toward pastel. I have no idea why this happens. Now, personally, when I shoot action, I use 1080p almost exclusively, so I'd still lean toward the GoPro. But if you actually think you might shoot more 4K than 1080, then these are big points for the Garmin. In low light, the Garmin is brighter, but it also has a lot more digital noise, which I find to be distracting. The GoPro is slightly dimmer, but the smoothness of the image is more pleasing to the eye. Both cameras are capable of shooting 1080p at 120 frames a second. So if your final mix is going to be 24 frames per second, that means you can get buttery smooth 20% slow motion. Both cameras do a good job, but detail is slightly better with the Garmin, while color is slightly better with the GoPro. Let's call it a toss-up. Audio test, 1, 2, everything outside of their respective cases. High notes, low notes. Audio test, 1, 2, everything outside of their respective cases. High notes, low notes. 1, 2, 1, 2, everything in its respective waterproof or frame cases. Testing. High notes, low notes. 1, 2, 1, 2, everything in its respective waterproof or frame cases. Testing. High notes, low notes. It's definitely a close contest, but we're giving the win to the GoPro Hero5 Black. In most cases, the image looked a little better, audio is definitely better, especially for water sports, and the GoPro is just much easier to use. We wish it could do the same intricate sensor data overlays like Garmin can, but hopefully at least some of that is coming soon. So let's talk about the Hero5 session. This is GoPro's tiny little cube of a camera. It's light, it's really easy to mount. Physically, it's identical to the Hero4 session, but there are some key upgrades to the brains. For starters, it now does 4K at 30 frames a second and 1080 at speeds of up to 90. That's a big upgrade from where it came from. Photos have been upgraded from 8 megapixels to 10 megapixels. Like its big brother, it has linear view and stabilization options, and it also has voice commands, which is really awesome. Also a big upgrade from last year is you can now use the rear button and the button on top to change modes in the camera and adjust all of the settings. Previously, you had to pair it with an app or remote control, which was a huge pain in the ass. This is much better. Video quality has just gotten massively better. There's just so much more detail than there was in the first generation session. Shapes are more defined, its dynamic range is wider, and it simply looks like a higher-end camera. The image is a little bit darker, which is what happens when you swap in a sensor with higher pixel density, but it's absolutely worth the trade-off. Audio test, 1, 2, everything outside of their respective cases. Audio test, 1, 2, everything outside of their respective cases. Lastly, being able to crank the frame rate up to 90 at 1080p means you can get much smoother slow motion compared to the Hero4 session, which is stuck at 60. It's not as fast as the higher end cameras, but it's a noticeable improvement. Overall, it just looks so much better. So what did we learn here today? Well, if you watched our Hero4 session review a year ago, you'll know that we loved the size and form factor. We just didn't like the resolution or the usability. And we're happy to say that a year later, they fixed almost all of those problems with the Hero5 session. Coming in at $300, it's actually a really good deal for a really small camera. So if you need something small and easily mountable, this may be a good thing to look at. But if you want our pick for the #1 action camera, we're gonna have to go with the Hero5 Black. The VIRB comes close in a lot of ways, but for overall ease of use, durability, and image quality, we think the GoPro Hero5 just can't be beat. It's very flexible, and it's going to work with GoPro's new Karma drone, which we'll be showing you in a video very soon. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe to Wired if you haven't already. With all that being said, there's only one thing left to do.
So you can see, like down there, there's a person there with a what looks like a pile of trash, but if you look closely, it's just that they're going through mobile phones and stripping out parts from them.